Hi, everyone. Good evening. Carl Steinbeck here. Tonight, I want to cover part 3 of our continued coverage of this case, Massachusetts versus Karen Reed out of Denham, Massachusetts. It's a second-degree murder case along with manslaughter and fleeing the scene of an accident. And the first trial was a hung jury, but the jurors were totally confused on what their roles were. And they wound up, even though they were unanimously finding her not guilty of second-degree murder and also fleeing the scene, they really only hung up on the second charge of manslaughter charge. So in any event, there's a second trial that's starting here on April 1st. So I want to go over the testimony of the different witnesses that the government presented, and I thought it'd be insightful to show what these some of these characters they had for the prosecution that were really revealing in terms of how justice matters are handled there in Massachusetts courtrooms. And this one here is on so many levels disturbing. It's so disgusting what I see going on in the courtroom. The degree of bias from the judge is just off the charts. I mean, this is like textbook bias if you've ever seen it, and we'll cover that more as this unravels here tonight, as well as I'm going to cover some of the other witnesses as well for the prosecution. And what you really see is a good example of how you have corrupt justice in a legal system. And so I'll break those kind of details down some more, and the kind of unfair rulings that Karen has faced with her counsel. It's just really, you really have to have intestinal fortitude. You have to have guts and perseverance to go against a rigged system where you got a prosecutor that's trying to cut you off the knees, doesn't let you ask constitutionally required type of questions of witnesses like this Sergeant Brian Albert of the Boston Police Department, and these other witnesses as well. And it just really boils my blood to see people get not even a fair shake at justice. And when I've been a prosecutor different times, if somebody's guilty, I let all these kind of questions come on in, because you know what? I have the kind of evidence that's necessary. I have the arguments, and I have the rebuttal type evidence needed to overcome these kind of questions. But that's not what's happening here in the courtroom. What you have is the prosecutor, Lally. He's objecting every time there's a golden nugget kind of answer that's going to be elicited from the witness that actually really shows how weak the case is. So that's what's really frustrating to see. And then when you have a judge that's continually rubber stamping the prosecution, and the number one way I see that she's so biased, besides the number of rulings that she gives favorable to the prosecution that are otherwise legitimate, but if you notice, she never says overruled for the objection of Lally. What she does say is along the lines of directly asking the witness a question, or says, "I'll allow it." And she doesn't talk that way when the defense is objecting. She does overruled or sustained. Those are the normal kind of comments you expect from a judge. So that to me looks like she's definitely in her mind tracking one side as in her favored status, favored position. And I think also she, in so many other comments she says, are very much jaded against the defense, and doing things that actually hurt the defense posture in front of the jury by saying things like, "Jackson, you know better than that." Um, and so I think those kind of things is basically help undercut the jury from seeing both sides for a fair duel of the evidence, and trying to present what each side is saying is the truth. So if you have a judge that's already taken sides by the rulings that she repeatedly is giving, and not giving uniform rulings towards both sides, because why can't she say overruled to Lally? She just can't help herself. She cannot get there. And the reason being, there's something else going on behind the scenes. Now, I've read some stuff or seen stuff on YouTube saying that she's got connections to Morrissey. Morrissey used to be a state senator, and he helped appoint her to that position. And then he became a DA as well. I don't know the timing of all that. I don't know if it's even true, but I'm saying that's the kind of stuff that can jade a system against the defendant, and you cannot get a fair trial because of that. So I don't know what any of that, if there's, like I say, any truth to any of that, but it sure looks like something like that's going on. Okay, because you don't normally see a judge that biased against one party. All right, and she's a career public defender before she's appointed to the bench. So anyway, let's go through this tonight again and listen to some of this. We're almost done with the cross-examination here, and then there's going to be redirect, so I'll cover some of that as well. And I just give you my thoughts and opinions. And this is where we finished off around this mark last Sunday night. And so this one here is having to do with this whole thing about a butt dial between this witness, Brian Albert. Keep in mind, this is the front yard is where the body of John O'Keefe was found the morning after he had this after hours party at his house. And he never went outside to go check on him, despite him being an active sergeant and detective, mind you, with the Boston Police Department. So with this, let's go ahead and proceed. If you do have any questions, I'll be stopping and posting some of your questions. I may stop. So feel free to ask questions throughout this. Normally I ask for questions at the end of my my talking points, but go ahead and jump in. And some of those I'll go ahead and present on the screen, and I may stop it as well or just talk through those. All right, hold on a second here. It's not letting me. Okay, here we go. Got to move a couple screens around here.
I don't know that to be a fact. I just know I didn't answer the phone call. I missed the call. Yes.
That's what I mean.
Right.
You missed the call.
Right.
It did something on your phone and you just didn't answer. What do you mean?
Right.
Okay. And again, you're using an iPhone.
Yes.
If you butt dialed Brian Higgins and he called you back and you didn't answer, you would have a very bright red missed call in your call log, correct?
Objection.
Do you know that?
I don't know that.
Okay,
Have you ever
right
missed
there.
a call on your
All
iPhone
right.
before?
Yes.
And when you go to your call log,
That's
it
another
says
example.
missed call in red, correct? If your wife calls you, your kids call you.
I don't think I've ever noticed that it's in red, and so no, I don't know that to be true.
You're certainly alerted to the fact that it's a missed call, that you missed the call, correct?
If I were to go back and look at my incoming calls, it would probably say missed call. Yes.
And of course, if we asked you to show us your phone and show that that was a missed call, you couldn't do that because you've gotten rid of that phone, correct?
Objection.
Show that that was a missed call,
That's
you couldn't
completely
do that
legitimate. Why is he
because
objecting?
you've gotten rid of that phone, correct?
Objection.
System. Did
That's
you tell
totally
anyone in
legitimate.
law enforcement that next day that oddly Brian Higgins was calling you at 2:22 a.m. and you missed a call?
No, I wasn't aware of that call.
If a call went to voicemail on your phone, you would get that voicemail, correct? You'd get notice of it.
If I checked my voicemails and there was a voicemail, I would get it. Yes.
That's my question. Did you get a voicemail from Brian Higgins?
No.
Which means he didn't leave a voicemail.
Right.
Which would suggest that you answered the call, correct?
Objection.
Let's talk for a second about this butt dial. You went to bed and you closed and your phone was, you closed and locked your phone, correct?
Yes.
I don't want you to tell me what the passcode is, Mr. Albert. That's important. I want to make sure you understand. I'm not asking you to tell me what the passcode is, but at the time, was your passcode a 4-digit or 6-digit passcode?
4, I believe.
And that locks the phone when it.
You know, even just him saying, I believe, you don't know how many passcodes you have on your phone. I mean, he's just trying to stall and try to grind the defense counsel into sort of like losing their steam and momentum. So this kind of stuff just, I think, comes across really bad. I say we have the retired highway patrol man from North Carolina on here. Welcome, sir. Yeah, if you have any questions, we can have some dialogue here. Yeah, these kind of things here that he's just playing dumb. Really, he's playing dumb in front of the jury. He thinks he can get away with it, and let's see how he plays out here.
It's not in use, correct?
The phone will lock after it's not used for a while. I don't know the exact timing of it.
You're exactly right, Mr. Albert. I said it backward. The phone automatically locks. You have to use the 4-digit passcode to unlock it, correct?
Well, no, I also have face recognition too, so it can open that way without any passcode.
We'll get to that in a second. The phone locks when it's not in use, correct?
Yes.
And then to make a call, once you open the phone, either through facial recognition or through the passcode, then you have to tap on the phone app in order to open up the phone app, correct?
Yes, I believe so.
Once you open up that phone app, there are only 3 ways that you can initiate a phone call. Favorites, recents, and contacts, correct?
I don't know that.
If you tap on a
Seriously, how just something that simple, he won't answer and says, I don't know that. So again, I think this shows any jury should pick up on the fact that he's being evasive. And why is he being evasive? If he has nothing to say but the truth about this case, why is he being invasive? It makes no sense. He's hiding something, so the jury should be picking up on this. What is he hiding? Here, officer, you're saying every time you testified, you looked at the judge or jury. I never stopped to look at the DA to object. Never. Well, that's something he needs help with. You know, he needs to help be bailed out here because he doesn't want to have to answer these really detailed questions. The more details you get into on somebody's testimony, the more that will reveal whether the person is telling the truth or not. Somebody's telling the truth, they have a good enough memory to fill in the details because they really happen. They have a good enough memory that way, and they're not going to be caught up in kind of twisted answers. But what happens when somebody's lying about something and they have to rely on their memory to remember what was the latest lie they told about this scenario. And so nobody has really a good enough memory and good enough verbal skills to be able to deflect and lie in a consistent manner without being exposed. So the devil's in the details to try to expose the truth. And so you don't even have to go far into details with this witness, and you can see automatically he's just doing everything he can. He's slipping around. He's trying to play this dumb cop basically routine. And we know he's a sergeant. We know he's not that stupid. And so it just leads you to really think there's something else going on here.
contact, that opens up the contact page or the contact app, right? You know that.
Yes.
It's where all your contacts are.
Yes.
They're alphabetized.
Yes.
You have to either scroll through or do a search and type in the name of the person you're looking for.
Right.
You didn't do that, did you?
No.
If you tap favorites, if you have favorites listed, there's a list of favorites. You have to scroll through and tap the one that you want to call, correct?
I think so. Yes. I'm not totally aware of that, but.
And if you tap on recents, those are the recent calls that you've had, you've either received or made. And of course, you have to tap on the contact in the recents list that you want to call, right?
Yes.
And then, of course, you would have to tap again to end whatever call you initiated, right?
Yes.
I mean, you don't just say goodbye. You got to say goodbye and hang up. You got to tap it to hang it up.
Right.
So would you agree, from a closed and locked phone, there is no physical mechanism by which a person can hit one button and make a phone call?
Objection.
Wow, that is so. This is another example. Lally knows this makes him look bad, so he objects. It's not about getting Karen a fair trial. This is all about keeping out the damning information, protecting the cops, and what is the judge doing? She's agreeing to go along with this. So this is very, very much a disturbing thing to see. And it goes on and on. It's pervasive throughout this trial. It's just really a sham courtroom.
Are you saying that from your closed and locked phone, you inadvertently tapped your phone one time and that initiated a butt dial to Brian?
Objection.
Is that what you're saying?
No, that's not what I'm saying.
Tell me what you're saying. How did you butt dial Brian Higgins?
that again, I mean, this is very important. It's showing something that these two law enforcement officers are going to be butt dialing each other one after the other at 2:20 something in the morning. And that's just a normal coincidence, right? Something else was going on here, and they're trying to have communication, and the communication is very suspicious, and that's what the prosecution doesn't want to have come out. They don't want to have this really zeroed in kind of cross examination to expose something that's going on here is what doesn't meet the eye. There's something else they're trying to hide here. And the prosecutor, if he really thought this was harmless conversation, that he really didn't do anything wrong and defense isn't scoring any points, you let it go. You totally let it go because there's no harm, there's no foul here. It's totally within the rules. You understand defense counsel has to do their job. Your job is not to hijack the line of questioning and prevent stuff from coming out that is probing of the witness's truthfulness. But no, here what you see is a complete objection to any line of truthfulness of what was really going on with these people. Hold their feet to the fire and dig into the details. See if they are really telling the truth. That's the only way you can really find out if somebody's telling the truth, by digging and prying into the details. You know what? If somebody's telling the truth, they withstand that kind of withering cross-examination. But when you don't want the cross-examination, you know you got something to hide. Plain and simple. Yeah, and that's part of it also. He's pausing and taking his time, hoping that Lally objects. So yeah, it's a real dog and pony show. But here you got somebody's life on the line, their freedom's on the line, and so then for them to play games in court like this is just very, very, very disturbing to see.
I don't know.
2:42 in the morning.
I don't know that the phone was locked. I could have been looking through my phone. I butt dial people often and make inadvertent calls. I could have hit a last call from him by accident.
So here you have a detective sergeant that butt dials people all the time. How does that happen? Is a phone in his pocket? I mean, if he's an officer and he's on duty, does he really have a phone in his pocket, or is he going to have it in some kind of holster? If it's in a holster, it's not going to be butt dialing people. And like the attorney's saying, you do have these other protections on your phone to prevent you from butt dialing, especially if you're asleep. If you're asleep and your phone's not been open because you're sleeping and laying there, then obviously you got to do something manually to turn the phone back on, right? You're not going to butt dial then. And why would his phone be laying on the bed there where he can have it turned on like that? It makes near zero sense. The guy's completely losing it here in terms of credibility. And it's just over something. Keep in mind, this is something that's very simple. It's very simple. This issue about butt dialing. Why are you butt dialing somebody at 2 something in the morning when John O'Keefe is laying in your front yard?
Thus calling his phone.
So you were actually awake and on your phone at the time.
I was awake and I could have been looking at my phone.
So Mr. Albert, how'd you miss the call 17 seconds later?
Well, my wife was.
That's a great question. So is he asleep? Is he awake? Is he on his phone? If he's on his phone, he's not paying attention to what's going on outside ever, who's left the party, all that kind of stuff. He's just doesn't have any.
Was in the room with me
story here.
And we were hanging out and I never got the second call from him. So I'm not sure what time he called. I'm not sure what I was doing at that second, but I don't know.
Okay, so suddenly he doesn't have any ability to know whether the second call came in or not. He never checked his phone. Think about it. There's something like somebody dying in your front yard. You're going to have it, especially as a detective, have all this recall about what was going on, who you're talking to, what you're doing. That whole night's going to come into play. And then if you hear Karen Reed is involved in it, you're going to remember everything she was doing at the bar. And remember his earlier testimony, he didn't know anything about what she's doing. He initially said he'd never seen her before, all this kind of stuff. And there she is taking photographs of him. We have video of him standing near her at the bar, the Waterfall Grill and Bar. So, I mean, he is really bobbing and weaving. He's looking really bad here.
But it didn't go to voicemail.
Well, I didn't get a voicemail from him. No.
So it didn't go to voicemail.
Well, I don't know that don't know that it didn't go to voicemail. I just know that I didn't receive a voicemail from him.
So if you, okay.
I mean, we're all guessing here, but I mean, he could have called voicemail.
We're not all guessing.
Well, you are, because you don't know if he left a voicemail or didn't, or at least got voicemail and then hung up the phone.
I think one of us is trying to guess.
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustained. You know what, I want to see counsel sidebar for just a second.
All right, hold on a second.
Sustained.
Left a voicemail or didn't, or at least got voicemail and then hung up the phone.
I think one of us is trying to guess.
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustained. You know what, I want to see counsel sidebar for just a second.
Okay, really, neither one of us trying to guess. How, objection to that comment? You know, they don't want guessing of this witness. They want the truth coming out of him. So even Lally's objecting to that they want the truth and not some guessing. So it's and now the judge is calling a sidebar because she's worried about, you know, this guy looking bad. Is she trying to save him or something? Let's see what happens.
May I approach briefly, Your Honor?
Yes.
Well, with the court's permission, let me ask a couple of questions. Do you recall every call that you made between, say, 1:45 a.m. and the next couple of days? You remember every single one of those calls?
No.
Do you think it would refresh your recollection to look at a log of those calls during that time frame if we're going to discuss those?
Yes.
May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
I may not even get it. I'll show it to you.
That's a good one.
Recollection as we walk through. May I, Your Honor?
Yes.
That's 2 pages worth of documents. If it refreshes your recollection as we walk through this with the court's permission, let me know if you need to refer to that.
Right. I'm not going to be able to read it right now. I'll do it as you ask.
Correct. Yeah. No, you don't need to read it right now. Just wanted to have it in front of you. By the way, you've seen these records before, correct? At the other hearing proceeding?
I've seen some records before, yes. I don't know if these exact records or not.
All right, and you've acknowledged that at least the first page, these are your phone records for the number ending 0888, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And these are call records from January 29th
Yes.
at 2:22 and 35 seconds in the morning, correct?
Yes.
Whose number ends in 5421?
According to this, it's Brian Higgins.
The call at 2:22 and 35 seconds appears to be 1 second in length. And that's from you to him, correct?
It says 1 second.
That would be the call, the initial call from you to him, the one that you claim is a butt dial. Is that right?
Yes.
Did that call roll to voicemail and then you immediately hung up?
No, I don't recall if it, I don't know.
So according to you, it was a butt dial that went to his phone and somehow lasted 1 second.
Right.
Okay. Then there's a second call. If you look at the second line down, there's a second call at 2:22 and 52 seconds, 17 seconds later, correct?
Yes.
That call is actually from Brian Higgins to you, isn't it?
Yes.
And that call doesn't last 1 second. That call lasts 22 seconds, correct?
Yes.
Obviously, you know how long 22 seconds is.
What's that?
You know how long 22 seconds lasts.
Yes.
So according to your phone records, you placed a call to him, and then 17 seconds later, he returned a call to you that lasted 22 seconds, correct?
That's what the records reflect, yes.
When you woke up in the morning, you obviously checked your phone, did you not?
Okay, well, why can't he just admit that? Yeah, that sounds about right. Like, yeah, I remember that happening. And he's saying, yeah, that's what the record reflects. So right there, it shows that he's only somewhat agreeing that's what the record shows. He's not acknowledged that, yeah, that I remember that. So again, he's trying to be evasive. The question is why?
I don't know if I did.
Are you telling this jury that the call that came into your phone was a missed call, or did you answer it?
I did not answer it.
So it would have been a missed call.
I just know I didn't answer the call.
So it would have been a missed call.
Well, I don't know. I don't know that to be a fact. I just know I didn't answer the phone call.
Okay.
I missed the call. Yes.
That's what I mean.
Right.
You missed the call.
Right.
It did something on your phone and you just didn't answer it. What do you mean?
Right.
Okay. And again, you're using an iPhone.
Yes.
If you butt dialed Brian Higgins and he called you back and you didn't answer, you would have a very bright red missed call in your call log, correct?
Objection.
Do you know that?
I don't know that.
Have you ever missed a call on your iPhone before?
Again, Lally knows this is damaging to the government's case, and he's objecting again. And this is so out of line. And but this is what you see there in Massachusetts. This is how much they have to try so hard to prosecute somebody that they don't even want them to get a fair trial. So this ought to be red flags for anybody that understands criminal law, understands the court system. This is not the way it's supposed to be done. Not at all.
Yes.
And when you go to your call logs, it says missed call in red, correct? If your wife calls you, your kids call you.
I don't think I've ever noticed that it's in red, and so no, I don't know that to be true.
You're certainly alert.
What? I mean, come on. This is like, wow. I mean, this guy's a detective, really? He's been on the force 30 years. And this is the kind of testimony you have. Yeah, he's not really this bad, right? He's playing it. He's playing a role here. Yeah, he is very nervous. He does not look comfortable, calm and collected.
Alerted to the fact that it's a missed call, that you missed a call, correct?
If I were to go back and look at my incoming calls, it would probably say missed call, yes.
And of course, if we asked you to show us your phone and show that that was a missed call, you couldn't do that because you've gotten rid of that phone, correct?
Objection.
Show that that was a missed call, you couldn't do that because you've gotten rid of that phone, correct?
Objection.
System.
Why? This is totally legitimate. You're showing that, hey, you can't show what was going on that night because you got rid of the phone. It's not on your phone anymore. You ditched the phone. So there's so many of these things that's going on and on and on and on. It is absolutely, the only benefit I can tell you is that you guys see how easy to just get railroaded if you don't have people doing stuff by the book. Okay, that's the only benefit you see here. And so it goes on and on and on. So let's see what else happens here.
Did you tell anyone in law enforcement that next day that oddly Brian Higgins was calling you at 2:22 a.m. and you missed a call?
No, I wasn't aware of that call.
If a call went to voicemail on your phone, you would get that voicemail, correct? You'd get notice of it.
If I checked my voicemails and there was a voicemail, I would get it, yes.
That's my question. Did you get a voicemail from Brian Higgins?
No.
Which means he didn't leave a voicemail.
Right.
Which would suggest that you answered the call, correct?
Objection.
System.
Okay, again, ditto. And if he was on for 22 seconds having a conversation, you're not gonna recall that. This is like probably the craziest night you've ever had living in that house since 1974, and the guy is found dead in your yard, and you're not going to remember this kind of thing. It's just not believable.
Let's talk for a second about this butt dial. You went to bed and you closed and you closed and locked your phone, correct?
Yes.
I don't want you to tell me what the passcode is, Mr. Albert. That's important. I want to make sure you understand. I'm not asking you to tell me what the passcode is, but at the time, was your passcode a 4-digit or 6-digit passcode?
4, I believe.
And that locks the phone when it's not in use, correct?
The phone will lock after it's not used for a while. I don't know the exact timing of it.
You're exactly right, Mr. Albert. I said it backward. The
Right.
phone automatically locks, you have to use the 4-digit passcode to unlock it, correct?
Well, no, I also have face recognition too, so it can open that way without any passcode.
We'll get to that in a second. The phone locks when it's not in use, correct?
Yes.
And then to make a call, once you open the phone, either through facial recognition.
Okay, fellow, that's a good question. Is it normal for lawyers not to have to provide a reason for objections? How does this judge know the basis? This has changed over the years. I've been licensed now, let's see, going on 35 years. So when I started out in the 90s, they did not have this issue where you don't have to state a basis for the objection. Now they sort of streamline it. You just have to say objection. The other side, they can state the basis for opposing that objection and then give an explanation. They're not required to do so, but the judge can make a ruling and not have to look for the non-moving party for their reasoning that they want to override the objection. So the person objecting is not required to make, like I say, make the basis for it. And I guess the preference is not to have the basis stated. But if you want to resist it, in other words, if you're in the defense, at the defense table, and you do want to get this information out there and do ask this question, you better come up with a reason why. And so that's what I see so many times is Jackson's not fighting for his basis, legal basis to override this court. So I looked at the local rules. I looked at the Massachusetts rules of criminal procedure, and that's where I'm getting this from. And so some of this also aligns with the federal rules of civil and criminal procedure. But I think it's like really takes away from folks knowing their craft. Because think about it. You can just not really know the law and just object to be objecting. And if you got a judge that's in your back pocket, just gonna rubber stamp most everything you do, then just keep objecting for the sake of objecting. You don't even have to know the law to object. So I think it really allows people to be lazy, allows them to just say, hey, what can I get away with? Gosh, I'm on a roll here. The judge is granting all my objections. So in any event, that's why we don't have them providing a basis. But I really wish in this next go round, like I've said before, they need to start going for a sidebar. If I want this information out, most everything like this, if the judge does not grant my request to ask this question, I'm going, Your Honor, could I have a sidebar, please? And we go up there, and I'm going to be hammering away and saying why this question is totally legitimate. And the jury will be sitting there waiting, and we'll have 5 minutes, let's say, of a dialogue, and I'll be very much strenuously objecting to the judge's ruling on this thing. And then giving basically making an explanation of the rules of evidence of why this is admissible, what exception is there to a hearsay, or why this is constitutionally required. And for a judge like this, I'd have different case law ready to cite. And what you do is this: I would just, if you're going to think you're going to this railroad my client and just have this kind of sham justice, I'm going to make you put everything on the record. I'm going to resist you every step of the way. We're going to have all these sidebars. You think you can just body slam a defendant in your court and not have any pushback? No, you're going to get pushback, and I'll do everything I can to counter it with the law and having these sidebars. So I'm going to drag your trial out as many days as it takes, as many weeks or months as it takes, because you got to stand up to this. And what I don't see Jackson doing is standing up enough to this. And, if it's not a big deal and he doesn't want to go up there, but I'm telling you, this judge, I'd put her on notice too. It's like, I'm not going to let you push us around this way with these bad rulings. I'd call her out on it. I'd say, Your Honor, you notice how you're always saying, I'll allow that. And you don't say overruled for anything the prosecution objects to, but you sure say it to me. So, she'll say soft things like, I'll allow it. Like she doesn't want to hurt the feelings of Lally. So, and then she also says things like, next question, please, for Jackson. So it just doesn't have any appearance that Karen Reed and her team are getting a fair shake at this. So anyway, that's why I'm covering it, to talk about it and show you how bad it can really get. This, like I say, the worst case of judicial bias in rulings that I've ever seen.
Or through the passcode. Then you have to tap on the phone app in order to open up the phone app, correct?
Yes, I believe so.
Once you open up that phone app, there are only 3 ways that you can initiate a phone call. Favorites, recents, and contacts, correct?
I don't know that.
Okay. Yeah, that's what he said, officer. Yeah, he mentioned that. So isn't that bizarre? Teresa, you're saying, and normally every life, not YouTube, or other lawyers talking about this case, how corrupt it is. I don't really talk to other lawyers about stuff I'm doing on this YouTube thing. My wife Leslie is a lawyer, obviously, so we talk about this case. But I think that's about the only lawyer I talk to about these criminal cases. But yeah, we both see what it is. That you're not going to get a fair shake on going against Liley. And I actually think, I will say this, I do think that this new prosecutor Brennan, I think he's going to be even worse than what we saw from Lally in terms of Karen getting a fair shake with their defense team. So I think it's going to be so much worse. In the defense counsel, they got to really fight and fight way harder than they did on this first trial.
If you tap on a contact, that opens up the contact page or the contact app, right? You know that.
Yes.
It's where all your contacts are.
Yes.
They're alphabetized.
Yes.
You have to
Carrie, you're asking, can they get in trouble or held accountable for these games? And I can tell you that this kind of stuff goes on unless you get a conviction on your client, if you're defense counsel, and you appeal it and you basically say that you didn't get to your evidence presented like that. It's hard to win those kind of cases, but it can happen. But you really want to get the judge to see that they're being unfair, and so you better have your case law to back it up and be able to argue why the facts of cases that were reversed because the defense counsel was not allowed to properly cross-examine and therefore denied a fair trial. The bottom line is you got to fight harder than what Jackson was doing, because the judge got away with pushing him around, and so I don't know. I think most attorneys do what Jackson's doing, but in the end, your client may suffer for it. So it's all about doing it respectful also. So you're not going to be, calling names of the judge. You're not going to be yelling. It's all respectful, and you got to maintain your ground, and it's legal. You have legal grounds to back this up. You're not asking for something out of thin air. You actually have legal grounds. There's legal analogy you can have to tie in your argument. But over and over again, I would be going up there, like I said, and having sidebars to make Lally realize this is gonna stop. And I would say things like that to the judge. Judge, we're being denied a fair trial here. Lally is trying to object just for the sake of objecting. There's no valid grounds for this. And then say the judge has the appearance. And I'd also, if the judge says, you know better than that, I'd call the judge out on that. I'd have a sidebar say, Your Honor, you're disparaging me in front of the jury. You're trying to make this jury, in effect, you can't say the judge is intentionally doing something like that, but you need to say that, Your Honor, the effects of you saying that to me are prejudicial to the defense team, and it carries on to my client. And make the judge realize that and call her out on her obvious dislike of the defense and her biased rulings. So without doing that and standing up every time, you just are not going to get a fair shake. And I think over time, if you really stand up, they're going to think, Lally's going to be thinking, in this case, Brennan, they're going to be thinking, do I really want to get this trial done, or am I going to sit there and just being able to flippantly say objection or objection and just continually cut them off at the knees? And so, yeah, I think that they would think twice about doing that. And you're going to get more favorable rulings if you don't fight and explain the law to the judge and why you needed to ask that question, how it's a justified question. Then you're not gonna you're gonna have all these examples of a rigged system.
either scroll through or do a search and type in the name of the person you're looking for.
Right.
You didn't do that, did you?
No.
If you tap favorites, if you have favorites listed, there's a list of favorites. You have to scroll through and tap the one that you want to call, correct?
I think so. Yes. I'm not totally aware of that, but
And if you tap on recents, those are the recent calls that you've had, you've either received or made. And of course, you have to tap on the contact in the recents list that you want to call, right?
yes.
And then, of course, you would have to tap again to end whatever call you initiated, right?
Yes.
I mean, you don't just say,
Yeah, good point, officer. The judge, if that's true that she has some connections with Morrissey, that's something that she should have recused herself on. And it's just, to me, so much an example. There's something going on here. And I think for the second trial, they need to voir dire her on her connections to the district attorney's office. And maybe they could even come up with stats on how many times she sustained the objections of Lally, and then show how many she had sustained for the defense, and also show the patterns of how she doesn't allow the defense to follow up because she cuts them off from doing the follow-up question, and ask the way she always asks the witness, can you answer that, instead of like saying overruled and allowing the witness to answer the question, or be restating, have the question being restated by the defense team. So anyway, it just looks so bad. Any way you look at it, looks very bad.
goodbye, you got to say goodbye and hang up. You got to tap it to hang it up.
Right.
So would you agree, from a closed and locked phone, there is no physical mechanism by which a person can hit one button and make a phone call?
Objection.
Sustained message.
Are you saying that from your closed and locked phone,
Back up.
there is no physical mechanism by which a person can hit one button and make a phone call?
Objection.
Sustained.
I mean, this is a generic question. He could have maybe asked it more specifically about his phone. And so look at the way he's looking here. He's looking down. He's not ready to answer the question. He knows he's playing stupid here. You can just tell he's just trying to slow roll it. And there he's got Lally to bail him out. Teresa brings up, you cannot butt dial from an iPhone. I don't have an iPhone. I haven't had one in many years, so I don't know if that's true or not. I trust your opinion on that. So any of y'all can vouch for that and let us know. But that's interesting. Yeah, I think anybody with a neutral, like I say, I came in this case neutral. I don't presume anything. I knew there's all this circus media and a lot of people in the camp of free Karen Reed and all that kinds of all that kind of stuff. That hype doesn't affect my views of the case. I'm looking at it straight from an evidentiary standpoint and what they brought out at the first trial. And so yeah, it is the more you look at this case, the more as a U.S. citizen, you should be extremely outraged and disgusted that somebody could have this kind of a trial when they're accused. Okay, that you're presumed innocent, but they're doing everything they can to make it look like you're presumed guilty, and that's what's so troubling to see.
Message.
Are you saying that from your closed and locked phone, you inadvertently tapped your phone one time and that initiated a butt dial to Brian?
Objection.
Is that what you're saying?
No, that's not what I'm saying.
Tell me what you're saying.
Well,
How
I
did you butt dial Brian Higgins?
I don't know.
42 in the morning.
I don't know that the phone was locked. I could have been looking through my phone. I butt dial people often and make inadvertent calls. I could have hit a last call from him by accident, thus calling his phone.
So you were actually awake and on your phone at the time.
I was awake and I could have been looking at my phone.
that's a good
So
one.
Mr. Albert, how'd you miss the call 17 seconds later?
Well, my wife was in the room with me and we were hanging out and I never got the second call from him. So I'm not sure what time he called. I'm not sure what I was doing at that second, but
How are you not going to know that? I mean, come on, this is like the most critical night in the house you've been in since 1974, and you're going to know every little detail. You're going to know who's calling you, when they're calling you, all that kind of stuff. You have your phone there to recall stuff. Your mind is, as a detective, is going to be like a steel trap. None of that kind of stuff's going to escape. Becky Ireland, you're asking, is there some kind of board that oversees actions of the judge, a place for public to turn in a complaint? There are places you can do online complaints about judges, but it's not going to kind of stuff they're going to take an action upon because there's unfavorable rulings. So it's yeah, I don't think there's really much you can do. I don't know if they're elected there in Massachusetts or if they're appointed or a combination of the two in case there's a vacancy and they don't have time to run an election. They'll appoint somebody meanwhile in the interim. So I've not looked that up, but I probably should after this and see exactly what how she came into office there. But you know, some states are appointed and then they'll have elections to that can only unseat them. So pretty much they're there for life. So unless they get a public reputation doing something really outrageous, they're on there for life. So don't know what the case is for Massachusetts, but man, can you believe this kind of stuff goes on there? And I'm just thinking though also of what if it's not somebody that's got money and the news media following this case? What if it's just some poor person they pick up off the streets of that area and they prosecute them for a case like this? They're not going to have all these lawyers volunteering. They're not going to have the media coverage. They're not going to have people protesting in the streets. So that's what can happen if you get these kind of politics playing in and being such a huge factor that you know, these people are just another a body that that is taken out through this machine of politics, and they get away with it. So yeah, it's very easy to get away with this. So that's probably the one good thing about this is that folks like yourself, content creators on YouTube and other media platforms that can cover this kind of stuff and see it for what it is, which is this is not what we want here in America, right? It is not making us look good. And that's one of the reasons why I think it's very critical to have jury trials. Most nations do not have jury trials. The reason it's so critical to have jury trials is because of judges like this would automatically find her guilty. There's no doubt in my mind. This judge would automatically find her guilty. And, you know, after the first trial, a directed verdict should have taken out that murder charge. The murder charge, there was no really evidence there to corroborate the theory. I guess if you took into account what Officer Paul said, but it's just so incredulous what he was saying that I just don't know why we're here going at a second bite at the apple for the government with this ridiculous murder charge. But here we go. I don't think there's any chance they'll get a conviction unless there's something hokey going on with the jury or they get some really unqualified people on the jury that are sitting there that are easily confused, and then I guess you could get a conviction on some of these counts. But in any event, yes, North Carolina officer, you're saying too many phone calls between 12 a.m. and 6 a.m. Very suspicious. Absolutely. They didn't know anybody's in the front yard. They're not looking out. They're not. You think they might even be looking outside to see how much snow there is, right? But they're not even doing that apparently. Yeah, that's a good point, Rosemary. Lucas Knight, you're saying, is this what you consider to be a hostile witness? No, I mean, he's answering the questions, but being slow and evasive like that, no, hostile, I would, I guess for me, it all depends on that term hostile witness. It's something you do if it's your own witness and they're not being cooperative with you, then you have to maybe ask the court permission to treat them a hostile witness, which means you sort of have more liberty to ask them leading questions. So a hostile witness, it is hostile. In other words, it's opposing to the defense side. So he is hostile from that standpoint. But and hostile means you should be able to cross-examine them and you should be able to score points, showing the flaws in their testimony, showing all the deception indicators, the contradictions. And here, Lally's trying to keep all that out, and the judge seems to be supporting that all the way. So strange. Yeah, I think that's a good point, Joanne. See, you're saying it's absolutely suspicious. They were discussing what happened, no doubt in my mind, after this whole trial and pretrial. That's what I think a jury's going to be thinking, is that had to be why they had these calls, and then they can't come straight and clean about it. Yeah, the other thing is, keep in mind he's got his lawyer there, and that's one of the things that, a police officer needs a private lawyer there. So the questions I ask, so you testified 100 times. So how many times you had your own personal lawyer there? So anyway, it's sort of like what so many of these witnesses have is their own personal lawyer. So all these government witnesses, they all lawyered up. They all got their lawyers. They all have something that, they're just there to tell the truth. But my gosh, we're spending all this money to hire lawyers. And what are the lawyers going to say? Just tell the truth, right? Tell the truth. If you're not telling the truth, then what else can they tell you? Oh yeah, this is how, yeah, that doesn't sound good. You might want to rephrase it this way or that way, or recoach them to say it another way, or whatnot. So it just doesn't look good, and it's something that I'd really be hammering home if I was a defense attorney on a case like this. Yeah. I mean, that's I'm really surprised he came to court like that. If he doesn't wear the same type of outfit, a sweater in court, that's something I'd raise as well, and ask him about it this next time he testifies. So no matter what he does, even if it's in the same sweater, even if he's in a suit or something like that, I would say, oh, I know you're not wearing your sweater now, and make some inferences about that. All right, let's go ahead here then.
I don't know.
But it didn't go to voicemail.
Well, I didn't get a voicemail from him. No.
So it didn't go to voicemail.
Well, I don't know that it didn't go to voicemail. I just know that I didn't receive a voicemail from him.
So okay.
I mean, we're all guessing here, but I mean, he could have called voicemail.
We're not all guessing.
Well, you are, because you don't know if he left a voicemail or didn't, or at least got voicemail and then hung up the phone.
Okay. Now, granted, sometimes voicemails don't go through. Somebody can leave a message and maybe it doesn't go through, or maybe it goes through days or weeks later. I mean, that kind of thing can happen. But, he also had his phone for a while, so you think it would eventually populate in his inbox kind of thing. Justina Data, you're saying all those sworn in, why do witnesses still lie? I can just tell you, people lie all the time in court. They lie so bad. They usually can, get away with it without even getting any kind of perjury charge or stuff like that. So that's really tough to see. And but it takes lawyers to try to show the truth through this kind of cross-examination. That's why if somebody doesn't want their witness to be thoroughly cross-examined, that's probably a good indicator they don't really trust their credibility either. If I know a witness is telling the truth, I can sit back and like, you know what? Go ahead, defense counsel, or go ahead, prosecutor, whatever side I'm on. Go ahead and try to impeach them. You know what? Because you're going to look bad. The more you try to dig into the details, the more you're going to realize, God, they really are telling the truth. So that's the way it really works in the courtroom. So if you don't have a lawyer that knows how to really do cross-examination good enough, you may not get to that level of detail, know whether they're really telling the truth or not. But that's why if I'm a defense counsel, I put my client on the stand, I know they're going to be bulletproof. There's nothing the prosecution can do to rattle them. They're fully explaining what happened and how they're innocent of the accusations and charges. So that's pretty much how it works. But in any event, this one here is it's really the body language. There's a lot of things that are revealing, not just what is said, but how it's said. And you can tell he's nervous. So he's testified 100 times, but he's nervous in this case where he had no involvement. So why is that?
I think one of us is trying to guess.
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustained. You know what, I want to see Counselor sidebar for just a second.
Yeah, Loki, you're saying it's certified?
Are you now saying that your phone was open and unlocked at 2:22 a.m.?
I'm saying it could have been.
Are you saying that it was?
I don't know.
Mr. Albert, you were the only person that was there with your phone. Was the phone unlocked and did you make a call?
Objection.
Can you answer that?
Sure, I don't know.
And 17 seconds later, again, presuming you're the only person there with the phone, did you answer that call?
I did not.
You would agree that in order to answer a call,
Yeah.
you can't just look at your phone to answer it. It has to be swiped physically, correct?
I think you can hit, I think it comes up green or red for the phone call, whether it's locked or not, and you can hit green.
Right, but you have to hit a button.
Yes,
Did you hit a button to answer a call from Brian Higgins?
I
I don't mean to talk over you. Please let me finish my question. Did you hit a button to answer a phone call from Brian Higgins at 2:22 and 52 seconds in the morning?
not that I know of.
You do know that that phone was
Of course you would know that. How would you not know that? It's I don't know if this channel I've got here is replaying something. I don't know if it sort of seems like we've heard this before, so I apologize if this is a restatement. But anyway, it's worth listening to again if it is, because it's like really the more you listen to this, the more you pick up on things, the more you really realize that this guy is really having a hard time just coming up with this most simple, straightforward answers to questions. It's very simple. It's very simple, and he can't answer the most simple question in a straightforward manner. So this is really scoring big points for the defense. It should be.
will not answer on its own, correct?
Yes.
And simply touching your butt will not answer that phone. It has to be swiped.
No, I don't think it has to be swiped.
You would agree that a 22
What? It doesn't have to be swiped? You have to do something to manually get your phone to be answered. It doesn't automatically start the conversation with the person calling.
second call from Brian Higgins had to have been answered by you. Isn't that right?
Objection.
Do you agree with that?
Again, not overruled. Just right away. Do you agree with that? She doesn't want to make the prosecution look bad, which I don't think it's making them look bad. It's like you're just calling strikes and balls as an umpire of sorts, as a judge. But she can't even do that.
No,
Did Nicole, who else was in the room?
just myself and my wife.
And Chloe.
Yes. But Chloe's not a human, so it was myself and my wife.
By process of elimination, Nicole didn't answer that call, did she?
No,
Chloe, the non-human, didn't answer that call, did she?
no.
So who had to have answered the call, sir?
Objection.
Why, Lally? This is totally legitimate. The guy is being evasive. It's a simple follow-up question. There's records to show there's a 22-second call at a really critical time. We have somebody that's laying outside, dying or dead in your front yard. These are probing questions that are constitutionally required to be answered. And what do we have? We have Lally objecting.
Can you answer that?
I don't remember answering that call. Could have hit the phone by accident, causing it to answer.
Okay.
Okay, let's move on.
Whether he's up or not.
Your Honor, if I could have one or two more questions.
One more question.
Now your testimony is you could have answered the call, correct?
No, my testimony is that I don't know. You're asking me how it could have answered, and I'm trying to answer your question.
At a prior hearing in June of 2022, you were asked this exact question and you answered, quote, yeah, it's only possible that it's me, end quote, correct?
I don't recall answering that way, but I'm not sure.
And you were also asked, after being confronted with these records, quote, I guess I could have talked to him, meaning Mr. Higgins.
Yeah, and that's what's so disturbing, officer. I agree with this point. It's like, and I've said this before, it's like you're talking about a killed officer, that injuries were inflicted on him, and it obviously is intentional, whether it was through a human or a dog. It does look like this was most likely a murder, right? So if it's a murder, who did this? And so if somebody had done this to him, you need to treat it as a crime scene. You need to take it seriously from the get-go, from the very start all the way up through trial. And by you being evasive like this and not answering simple questions and the prosecution objecting, it just looks so bad.
correct?
I'll
I don't-
allow this, and this is-
I don't recall saying that, no.
Let's move on.
Did you have any conversation with Brian Higgins about a 2:22 a.m. phone call?
That next morning, while everything was going on, I mentioned to Brian that I may have butt dialed you last night. Sorry about that.
Did the two of you agree that you were going to both say those calls were butt dials in order to cover up those calls?
Objection.
You can answer that.
We did not.
Okay, why didn't you say overruled? Because you know, if the judge keeps saying overruled, 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 the jury's going to think, hey, maybe why is he trying to be such an obstructionist to us getting these answers, right? You can answer that, you can answer that, you can answer. It's like she's soft pedaling this ruling, right? That's
Not say that.
But let's be clear, since then and now, you've gotten rid of your phone, correct?
I upgraded my phone, yes.
And since then and now, Brian Higgins has gotten rid of his phone. You're aware of that as well.
Yes.
By the way, you indicated that you were awakened in the morning by Jen McCabe about 6:30, correct?
Yes.
And when you woke up, you said you grabbed your phone to make a call. Is that right?
No.
Isn't it true that you grabbed your phone and made a call at 7:20 in the morning?
Yes. But that's not when I was awoken by my sister-in-law.
Sorry, that wasn't my question. After you're awake and you're up, you
Right.
started making calls.
Right.
My question is, what was the first call you made at 7:20?
Can I look at this?
If that refreshes your recollection with the court's permission.
Yes.
that's true, officer, right?
At 7:20, I called Brian Higgins.
Mr. Albert, you have 6 siblings and 5 kids, right?
Yes.
You have in-laws, cousins, huge family, correct?
Yes.
But on the morning you find out that John O'Keefe is laying dead or dying on your lawn, the first call you made at 7:20 was to Brian Higgins. Is that right?
Yes.
The same person you had a call with, or at least the logs indicate you had a call with at 2:22 in the morning, correct?
Yes.
During that 7:20 a.m. call, did you two discuss the 2:22 a.m. calls?
No.
Thought you just said that you told him, oh, I think I may have butt dialed.
Yeah, that was later in the morning when he came to the house.
Not on that 7:20 a.m. call.
No.
What did you talk about on that 7:20 a.m. call?
Again, this is like he's asking questions he doesn't know the answer to. Massachusetts doesn't allow depositions, and there's apparently not a good detailed report. There's no indications that he made a sworn statement in detail talking about everything he did that night. So it seems like they're just grabbing these witnesses that are in the house, the prosecution is. And normally in a criminal case, if a witness like him is going to come forward and testify for the state, he's already going to give a detailed report and or a deposition, okay? But here, apparently you have neither. And I think him just not having those kind of details, really, it delays the trial process. He's asking a lot of questions and know the answer to, and it's hard to get witnesses locked in. So it's really frustrating to sit here and listen to all this open-ended questions because he doesn't know if it's going to lead to something necessarily favorable or not. And really what cross-examination should be is you know the answer and you're honing in on those kind of things to have this witness credibility attacked that way. So it just makes it sort of more of a fishing expedition type thing, not as much of really getting down to the nitty-gritty details that matter, the issues in controversy.
I informed him of what was going on at my house. We were out the night before, and I thought it was important for him to know what had happened.
Mr. Albert, I have a couple of more questions about the phones or the phone usage that morning and the day, throughout the day. You called Brian Higgins at 7:20 a.m. for 1 minute and 56 seconds, correct?
Yes.
Brian Higgins called you at 7:30 for 5 minutes and 47 seconds.
Yes.
You called Brian Higgins at 7:57 a.m. Spoke for 12 minutes and 33 seconds.
A lot of calls to Brian. Wow, 12 minutes.
Yes.
You then called your brother, Kevin Albert, at 9:40 a.m. and spoke for 1 minute and 5 seconds.
Yes.
Chief Berkowitz called you at 9:50 a.m. and left a voicemail. Is that right?
He didn't leave me a voicemail, but I think he called me.
You called Chief Berkowitz back at 9:54, 4 minutes later, and spoke for 4 minutes and 40 seconds, right?
Yes.
You called Jim McCabe at 11:30 a.m. Is that right?
Yes.
Jim McCabe called you back at 12:20 p.m. You spoke for 7 minutes and 52 seconds.
Yes.
You called Kevin Albert again at 2:01 in the afternoon and spoke for 8 minutes.
Yes.
I'm need to catch my questions here. Lucas Knight, you're saying if you question the judge in that way, wouldn't it be frowned upon? Well, the judge is already against you. So you know what, if you don't stand up for your rights, then they're pretty much going to be waived at that trial, and you need to change. You need to let the judge know you're not a pushover. Okay. That's the difference. If the judges let you, if the judge is getting away with this and you're not standing up and ask for sidebars, like I've been saying, which I would do, then basically the judge is going to keep doing what she's doing. So the only effective way you have to make a judge stop this during the trial from being so biased against you and the way she's treating you is to have sidebars and discuss it. You're not going to discuss this in front of the jury and basically tell the judge this is coming across bad. I'm not going to say the judge is personally biased or you are biased. I'm going to talk about the appearances, because in trials, the appearances are as bad as the intent to do harm. So the appearances, the judges, it doesn't like the defense counsel is making comments that are snide remarks, condescending tone, and actually no more than just tone. She's saying things like, you know better than that. Well, you know better than that means what? So he's being an underhanded, shady lawyer representing Karen, and because he's shady, then that means you're going to have guilt by association with Karen and her shady, sleazy type lawyers. That's what the effect is going to be. And so, yeah, it is very troubling, and you better stand up for it, because if the judge doesn't like it, trust me, the judge will respect you for doing that, for calling her out. She'll have to. She may not like you, but she'll respect you. And if you don't command respect by you calling out shenanigans going on in the courtroom, then you shouldn't be a trial lawyer, okay? If you don't have the fortitude to stand up to a judge as railroading your client, then you shouldn't be a criminal defense lawyer. Thanks, Lacey. Yeah, that's true here. Thanks, Sharon. Yeah, Sally, I agree with that. Yeah, this is Boston's finest. Wow. Yeah, this is going to be, I agree, looking for the truth. This is going to be so painful to watch. This Brennan guy, man, I think because you're going to have probably one of the worst examples of prosecution along with this judge. It's going to be, he better hunker down, and he better do what I'm saying, this kind of technique, because if he doesn't, they're just going to get crushed and steamrolled.
You called Kevin Albert at 6:45. I'm sorry. You called Brian Higgins at 3:24 p.m. and spoke for 6 minutes and 5 seconds. Is that right? And if it refreshes your recollection, there's a second page, second log. You'll turn your attention to the 3:24 p.m. time frame.
Trying to find it.
Take your time.
What time are you referring to?
3:24 p.m.
I see it. Yes.
And there's a second call. You call Brian Higgins at 6:12 p.m. Speak for 1 minute and 7 seconds, right?
Yes.
And then the third one on that page, you called Brian Higgins at 6:35 p.m. Spoke for 10 minutes and 12 seconds, correct?
Yes.
turning back to your call logs, you called Kevin Albert at 6:45 on the next, on that same day, spoke for about 16 minutes.
Yes.
Then on the next day, January 30th, you called Chief Berkowitz and spoke for 1 minute and 6 seconds.
Yes.
And the following day, you spoke with Jim McCabe, who called you at 8:04 p.m., correct?
Yes.
And finally, Chief Berkowitz called you at 1:48 p.m. on February 1st, right?
Yes.
3 days later, you spoke again to Brian Higgins at 8:48 a.m. Is that right?
Yes.
The subject of these calls, Mr. Albert, were all about the fact that John O'Keefe was found dying on your yard, on your lawn, on January 29th, 2022. Isn't that right?
I don't know the subject of all these calls, no.
You had to have been talking about that event.
Of course, it was a horrible situation that was going on. Everybody was distraught, and there were a lot of phone calls. This call log doesn't encompass all the phone calls.
No, it doesn't.
There were a lot of phone calls being made to a lot of people because of this horrible situation.
And the point is, Mr. Albert, those many calls that you've just described.
I just want to answer this one here. What average citizen without major resources could defend themselves against the weight of a corrupt government and the prosecution? Yeah, that's if you don't have a good defense lawyer, you have somebody that doesn't know how to take this on, then you can easily get railroaded and get convicted of something you're innocent of. So yeah, that is what can happen. Absolutely.
Especially as they pertain to Brian Higgins, Jim McCabe, Kenny Berkowitz, your brother Kevin Albert. Were those many calls an effort to get stories straight at the time?
No, absolutely not.
Were those many calls an
I'm
effort?
going to interrupt you, jury. We're going to send the jury out. There's actually, why don't we?
Okay, well, that was a good point to ask. Why would she just all of a sudden stop it like that? And it's like she can't stand to have defense ask some really good questions. So, yeah, Georgia Mom, you're saying she was recused. She was asked to be recused. She wouldn't. If I recall correctly, it was a matter of there was something on Facebook post saying that she was friends with some of the witnesses. And that's what the base of the motion to have her recuse herself, not the fact that she had other connections with Morrissey. So I think I hope they flush that out. If that's correct, I hope the defense flush that out and tries to get her replaced. Yeah, if that's true that their mothers work together as lunch ladies, very close. I don't know if that's true, but if it is, she should have recused herself. She should not be the judge on this this first case or this second one. Yeah, that's my understanding. That's my understanding. So is it normal? Well, that's how politics works. You know, people help each other out and then they have lifelong loyalties. Hey, you got me my judgeship. I was just a public defender. Normally, public defenders don't become judges. It's it's not unheard of, but it's very rare. I think I've only seen it happen one time. Officer, you're asking if I ever seen a witness. Judge asked witness, can you answer that? I don't think I have. They let the attorneys be doing the questioning. She's sort of like trying to jump in and sort of throw a lifeline to the prosecution. So no, it is very strange. It's not like a formal court of law. It's sort of like a free for all kind of thing with two people ganging up against the defense team. Yeah, I hope if they don't get her off as a judge, they better get a backbone and they better have their legal arguments in order. And they better have the case law on cross-examination ready to go. Supreme Court case law. Look up, there's I think it's a 1973 case, Davis v. Alaska. So if you just Google Davis v. Alaska, I'm pretty sure that's the case that I have used many times to cite why other information is necessary to bring out someone's motive to lie. That person was on probation, and if they were accused of doing the crime, then they could have their probation revoked, and the prosecution kept that information out. And the Supreme Court of the United States, not of Alaska, the United States, deemed that that was the denial of proper cross-examination, to probe motives, to fabricate of the star witness for the prosecution, and they set the conviction aside. So those are the kind of cases you better be zeroed in on. And most attorneys don't have those kind of things ready to go because you think the judge maybe knows the law. Here, it doesn't look like the judge knows the law or doesn't want to apply the law in a fair, uniform fashion. So that's why you better be extra prepared, especially when you know what happened for a kangaroo court the first go round.
Please.
Thank you. Mr. Albert, I want to address a couple of quick things that we talked about a little bit earlier. The September 22nd, 2022 date, recall that date?
Yes.
That's the date that you indicate that you believe you got rid of your phone or turned your phone in for an upgrade.
Yes.
Did you watch the proceedings that on this case, the Commonwealth versus Karen Reed, on September 22nd, 2022?
No.
You were not aware that that was the first date that I appeared on this case? It was nationally televised?
Objection.
Sustained.
Were you aware that that hearing date of September 22nd, 2022 was a televised hearing?
Objection.
Sustained.
What did you
Why?
know about
Why can't he go down this line of questioning? I just,
the hearing date of September 22nd, 2022?
I didn't know anything about it.
Knew nothing about it?
No.
Okay. Let me ask a different question. This is going to dovetail into an earlier conversation you and I had concerning statement that you gave to in June of 2023 to the other hearing. You understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
I'm fumbling the language a little bit, but you understand the hearing that I'm talking about.
Yes.
You had indicated a little bit earlier in my questioning.
right, hold on. Monique, you're asking why there's no oversight on judges. Well, the oversight is really the case gets appealed and then, the case is set aside if the judges make bad rulings that are prejudicial to defense, getting a fair trial. But other than like judicial misconduct, like there's some kind of corruption of the judge, there's not really any kind of body that investigates them and whatnot. So here, being able to see these on the different video formats and live feeds of what's going on in the courtroom, it really helps show how bad things can get in justice up there in Massachusetts. So this kind of stuff can happen anywhere else in the United States. I just have not seen a judge this one-sided before.
That you did not recall saying something to the effect of, yeah, it's only possible that it was me who answered the phone. You remember saying that? That you didn't recall that?
Yes.
Okay. May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
Mr. Albert, there's a highlighted portion of that transcript. If you just take a look at that, and when you finish reviewing it, just look up at me and let me know.
I've already covered this before in the beginning of the show, so you can circle back. The objections is the essence of it.
Yes, I got.
May I approach, Your Honor? Yes. Thank you. Mr. Albert, did that refresh your recollection as to the colloquy that you had with someone questioning you about this issue in?
Yeah, that's a good question here, Phoebe Beach. You're going to wonder why is somebody calling at 2 a.m.? Hey, that's pretty critical. The first thing you're going to ask them is like, if it was 7 something in the morning, you're going to say, hey, what were you calling me at 2 something for? That's really odd. What was going on? So, and think about it, before you go to bed, if he thinks he's still up, you're going to look at your phone maybe before you go to sleep. Now he says he was up. So, I mean, he's just all over the place. And him saying he doesn't remember, I just don't find that credible at all. Tiffany, you're saying the jurors so clueless. Yeah, they really were clueless in this case, but I think that with proper jury selection and proper presentation of the case and proper standing up to the railroading going on here. I still have my most hope and faith in the jury system, because without it, you just got to have, you can just basically have government hacks that'll just completely trample on your constitutional rights. So the jury's the equalizer. We need juries. So no matter how bad they are, or clueless they are, we still need juries. It's really it's somewhat hard to get 12 people to agree on something, and especially on whether to convict somebody of a murder charge or not. So the burden is on the state, and they need to hold their feet to the fire. And for the court to be one-sided in their rulings like this, it is really it really is our last stopgap measure, is the jury, because without a jury, any innocent person could be convicted under the right rigging. And Harry's mom, you're saying, so the Fed's experts determined the car didn't hit John O'Keefe. They just dropped their investigation. I think they're looking more for see if there's some kind of like cover up going on. They probably were looking at issues going on, what was going on in the Albert home. And maybe they just didn't have enough evidence to go forward. I mean, I've seen evidence with that's pretty solid to go to trial with the U.S. Attorney's Office, and they declined to prosecute for some, sort of a weak reason. Like the U.S. Attorney's Office, they want to have like an airtight case. Otherwise, they normally don't want to try it. And to me, a lot of times it's overly burdensome, their requirements, in order to take a case to trial. Much more so that is that way in the federal system than the state.
June of 2023.
Yes.
And in fact, you testified as follows. Question: can you just but then you?
Objection, Your Honor, as far as the reading.
As far as what?
Reading from the transcript, he's asked him if his memory is refreshed.
All right, so go ahead and ask him a question. Don't read from the transcript.
Did you in fact say, in answer to the question, if it's not your wife and it's not your dog, who else is it possible on earth to answer this phone? Answer: yeah, it's only possible that it's me. Did you say that?
Yes.
All right. By the way, the reason I'm not able to do full screen, if there's any comments out there, I haven't seen them, but the reason I can't do full screen is for some reason on the StreamYard app, I'm not able to adjust this play if I have it on full screen mode. And so I'm sort of trapped with having to have this kind of stuff at the top and the bottom. So I apologize for that.
Just before the break, I was asking you about those, as you indicated, many phone calls that you traded between and among your family members and friends, including Brian Higgins. You recall that?
Yes.
Were those many calls an effort to get your stories straight about how you were going to, what statements you were going to give to law enforcement, and how were you going to testify if this case ever went to trial?
No, absolutely not.
Were those calls, or those many calls, an effort to coordinate narratives between you and your friends and your family?
No.
Were those many calls in any way discussing the fact of creating a story of mysterious butt dials?
Objection.
Sustained.
Have a moment, Your Honor?
Yes.
Thank you, Your Honor. I have nothing further.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, so here he just sort of ends and sits down here. I don't get that. You want to end strong. Yeah, hanging out.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Years old, 56. I guess, at the time. Yeah. So, yeah, I would have teed up questioning for him where you sort of build it up and really bring about, when he had a break, ask him every time. So what did your lawyer tell you? What, he just told you to tell the truth again, huh? So that's the kind of stuff you need to really zero in. How much is he spent on that? And bring about the fact that what this also suggests is if he's innocent, he's hired a lawyer. So he's a law enforcement officer. So does he have some kind of reason not to trust a law enforcement officer that he has to hire the police? Hire a lawyer? Does he not trust the police? Does he not trust the district attorney's office? So if you don't trust either one of those, I can see you hiring a lawyer. Maybe if you're innocent, but if you're a law enforcement officer, you're 30-year sergeant with the Boston Police Department, and you're going to a smaller town, and you have the ability to, and you also have state troopers that work out of these offices. You also have ATF that works out of these offices. So you have all these friends there that you're working around, and yet you don't trust them. You got to hire your own lawyer. What does that suggest to you, members of the jury? I would say in your argument is that these guys have something that they're trying to hide behind. There's something else going on here. I know that Jackson said there's a police cover up, and they're hiding the ball and this kind of stuff. I think that for a lot of people, it's hard to believe that cops are actually this dirty acting, and so I think that from what we heard from like the one juror that spoke, he said that basically that the jury didn't think much of the lies from these government witnesses. And so you sort of scratch your head and go, why would that be the case? I mean, this sort of like critical information that they're asking suspicious. They can't give a straight answer. They're looking like they're deceiving in their answers. So why would a jury think that's credible? Well, I can only say that maybe as a strategy, I would do something like along the lines of saying that there's something else that happened here. There's reasonable doubt. Take it more from a reasonable doubt standpoint. And because if you also get stuff in front of the media like this and say, I know there's contradictions that the attorney Jackson and Karen have said, we know who did this. They said that one statement, and later on they say to a different national interview, they say, well, we don't know who did this. We can't say. So like, why would you have that kind of disconnect? You need to have consistent messaging on what's going on if you're going to make public statements. But in any event, because otherwise what that can be done is what can happen is that can be used against the defendant possibly. So I would just be very leery of having statements being given by a client, especially if they're contradictory. I do know that they have this national media team following them around sort of behind the scenes, get to look at the war room, how they're preparing to defend this first case. That is very, very unusual. And to me, it's very troubling, especially now they got a retrial, all that kind of stuff. It can be subpoenaed by the prosecution. And they can see sort of how they strategize and whatnot. Maybe some of that stuff can be used against them, maybe if not by a witness and videotape evidence type of thing. But just how they prepared this case, the first go around, could give them some strategic advantages. So I just don't feel good about that. But in the end, it doesn't change underlying facts, which is I think the government is not going to be able to prove their case of second-degree murder for Karen Reed. Yeah, that's true as well. So yeah, so the whole thing is they teach you to end strong on cross-examination, and here it's sort of like, well, he's done with the questioning about what happened with his butt dial and stuff like that. He sort of just left it at that. So in this particular case, Brenda, I would say that I don't believe that was asked from the interviews I saw, but yeah, it's sort of sum it all up. So if you think about all the things that that this witness has not been able to give a straight answer on, and things that he's claimed to have done just make no sense at all. And then you combine that with all the actions of the other parties as well. Higgins going back to the police department, won something in the morning as well. I mean, all this kind of stuff looks really shady, and nobody's seeing John O'Keefe laying in the snow there along the side of the road outside the front yard. I mean, none of this stuff adds up. It's just rampant reasonable doubt. And I can say that calling all these witnesses that have had lawyers as well, you're going to have the truth filtered from that as a fact finder. So nothing here is really doing anything except spelling reasonable doubt. I saw that they have a lot more experts listed on the government side this next go around. And I don't know what all those witnesses are going to talk about, but if it's like this Dr. Crosby, I don't think he's going to do them much good. And it seems to not have the kind of expertise that Bev required on the defense expert. So again, another showing that there appears to be some kind of biased ruling here favoring the prosecution. So in any event, I think that let's jump into the redirect here and let's get some assessments here of Lally.
You were asked some questions about the week prior to being at the waterfall. At some point, you were at the hillside, correct?
Yes,
You were there with friends and family, is that correct?
yes.
You weren't specifically there with either Mr. O'Keefe or the defendant, correct?
No, I was not.
And same with respect to the waterfall on January 28th, you were there with friends and family, is that correct?
Yes.
You weren't specifically there with Mr. O'Keefe or the defendant, correct?
No, they came unrelated to anything I was doing.
And you were shown some video from the waterfall from January 28th in which you were speaking at a sort of section of the table, correct?
Yes.
And was the defendant the only person in that section of the table?
No.
There were other people around her, behind her, is that correct?
Yes, it looked like there were other people at the table as well as situated right behind where she was sitting.
And those other people around her,
Seems to have really good memory when Lally's asking him questions. Sharon McCarthy, you're asking her, am I crazy or does it seem like the police are more on trial because of the bad investigation, hence zero evidence against the defendant, zero motive, zero smoking? Yeah, it's really like they're trying to prop up all this kind of evidence that that they're trying to cover for the fact that investigation, there really was no investigation. It was just all a hit job by Proctor. So they really have the most corrupted investigation you could ask for, and they have zero investigation that complies with forensic police investigation. So you can ask for a more botched case. This is like, it's like, you can't even imagine something like this could even happen nowadays. It's that bad.
behind her, those are people that you knew far better on January 28th than the defendant?
Yes, those are my relatives and friends, and that's why I was at that location.
You were asking questions about going over to Ms. McCabe's house later on in the afternoon of the 29th, correct?
Yes.
Why did you go over there?
I went to Jen's house because she's my sister-in-law. She was going through an awful time that morning, as we all were. And I wanted to be there to comfort her if she needed anything. Because we're so close, I didn't want her to feel like this was too much for her to handle.
Again, how long have you known Ms. McCabe?
I've known Jen since she was probably 6 or 7 years old. She's like a sister to me.
Wait a minute. He was like, it wasn't such a big deal to come out of your front yard and see what's going on, but yet you're worried about Jen and how she's handling it. Well, you handled it just fine. What do you mean that Jen didn't handle this fine? How is she somebody that you'd be concerned about? She was the one that came over to help find John, supposedly, but it's just everything about all these folks is just so suspicious, right?
Now, at your home on the January 28th and the January 29th, when people came back after the waterfall, did you at any point in time go into the basement area of your home?
No,
Did Brian Higgins at any time go into the basement area of your home?
not that I know of.
Did you see anyone go into the basement area of your home during the time that you were there after coming home from the waterfall?
No.
Now, you were asked some questions about your dog, Chloe, in that she wasn't great with strangers. What exactly did you mean by that?
All I meant was that she wasn't overly affectionate.
Okay, so if all that's true, then why is all this suspicious activity going on? What was going on then? If they're not a part of anything that that was involving more than what they said, and John O'Keefe never came to the house, and then why all this lack of straight answers? Why all this strange activity that night? There's something that any jury should pick up on, and that there's not truthful answers being provided by these witnesses for the prosecution.
With strangers. She's a heavy dog. Not everybody likes dogs. So if there's going to be people at the house that don't know the dog, they might not particularly want her around them.
Were you more concerned about the people in the house that didn't know Chloe, or were you more concerned about Chloe herself?
The people in the house. Never has the dog, to my knowledge, been aggressive to anybody except for the time that there was a fight between two dogs.
Now, you were shown in Exhibit 66 that was
This is a German Shepherd type of dog, so they're very much alert for any kind of things of a disturbance outside. So for the dog not to alert them, and the dog to suddenly be not there the next morning, and then disposed of to a rehoming a couple months later, I think it's all that is very suspicious activity.
sort of a drawing of your house. Do you recall that?
Yes.
And had you ever seen that prior to today?
No.
And do you recall specifically within the drawing or the artist's rendering of your house, there were certain lights on around the garage and the front door?
I did notice that, yes.
And do you recall whether or not those lights were on when you came home from the waterfall on January 29th?
I don't recall, but oftentimes those lights are off, and sometimes the bulbs don't even work in them.
Yeah, around that window, look at that butt dialing going around on 220, and then the Jan McCabe Google search 227. Yeah, there's something very, very strange going on there. And I understand there's some confusion or a misunderstanding. We don't know the true details on that 2:27 a.m., but I believe that that's probably most accurate. And for that question to be asked, how long it takes to die in a cold, something was going on that they knew about is what it would look like to a normal jury. And so they don't have to prove that that actually happened. They just have to have, and there's no burden on the defense, but I think bringing all this out like the defense is doing, it should spell reasonable doubt.
And when Ms. McCabe comes into your bedroom sometime after 6 a.m. on the 29th,
Yes.
that was following a day in which you woke up in New York City and went to a funeral, is that correct?
Yes, I went to a funeral that morning in New York.
And that was for a fallen police officer from the New York City Police Department?
Yes, a police officer in New York that had been murdered while on duty, and that was his funeral.
And did you know that police officer whose funeral you attended?
Objection.
The objection sustained. Next question.
Now, with reference to you then drive all the way.
Okay, I don't know why they objected. I guess maybe he does know the officer or not, but yeah, it's interesting. I would say he more likely than not did not know the officer. He said a officer. He would otherwise have said, yeah, a guy I know. So I don't know why the defense objected to that. Because I think if he doesn't know him, it looks more like, it looks worse. Because like you don't even know a guy, you've never seen the guy before, and yet you're going to fly down at government expense, go to a funeral. I don't understand why that's the case, but then you have John O'Keefe. Did he go to his funeral? It's my understanding he did not. So again, very, very different type follow-up to the death of an officer, and the guy is in his front yard. Did he go to the funeral or not? You know, that's something I would ask. I'd find out the answer to and bring that up on cross-examination as well.
Way home from New York to Massachusetts, correct?
Yes.
And you went out to a couple of different places, had a couple drinks, correct?
Yes.
And then went back to your home and went to bed sometime around 2 a.m. or so?
Yes, after 2.
And so about how long had you been asleep from the time that you dozed off to the time that Ms. McCabe comes into your bedroom that morning?
Only a few hours, probably 3-4 hours, 3.5, 4 hours.
Now, in relation to waking up that morning, you testified that you did not go outside, correct?
Yes.
And why not?
Initially, when I woke up and I was told what was going on out front, I looked out my window and I saw some emergency vehicles. I did not see John at that time. I came downstairs with my wife and she asked, where was John? And Jen said that he was...
Sustained. Next question.
What was your understanding of where Mr. O'Keefe was when he came downstairs?
Objection.
Ask it differently, Mr. Lally.
In reference to when you came downstairs, what was your understanding of medically what was going on outside your house?
Objection.
The objection system.
Was there any reason for you to go outside of your house at that time?
No, there was not.
Oh my gosh, this is like, really? You got police officers outside your house. You're told, where's John O'Keefe? Something's going on. And you probably had other emergency vehicles out there. So, and you just don't bother to go out. I guarantee you, any other law enforcement officer, any of us would just go out there right away, find out what the heck is going on. And so, and then you find out John O'Keefe is the one lying there and he's might be dead, and you still don't go outside. That's just not believable.
At that time, there was no victim out in front of my house. So there was no first aid for me to give. There was nothing I could do.
You run outside to find out what the heck's going on. Maybe how do you know he's not there anymore? You're going to run and find out. And as a law enforcement officer, you can get more information than somebody that wasn't a law enforcement officer. All you got to do is flash your badge if they don't know you and say, hey, what happened here? What's going on?
You were asking questions about the sort of bulkhead in the back of your house, correct?
Yes.
Where is that bulkhead in relation to the bay windows of the kitchen that you were testifying about?
So the bulkhead door is directly under the bay windows in the kitchen. The bulkhead door opens up almost directly into the windows, obviously without hitting them, but it opens up into the front of the bay windows.
What you saw as far as that video that was shown to you, that's not what the bulkhead looked like. That's not what the door looked like at that time on January 28th or 29th, 2022.
No, those are not the doors we had.
And as
Okay, but there were doors there. So why would he have to describe it? You think those should be admitted into evidence, but why? Because there was no kind of police investigation to preserve that kind of detail. Officer, you're saying if she was a public defender, I bet you 500K. She never tried a case. In 30 years, I never saw a public defender ever try a case. Always pled them guilty. So yeah, there are some public defenders like that. I was a public defender for 4 years, and I tried cases all the time. So yeah, I'm aware of attorneys like that, and they don't have to be public defenders either, that do not go to trial and everybody pleads out. So it's like, how do you never have a case where you need to go to trial? So I would say probably on average, I had about, when I was a public defender, I had about, of all the, gosh, I had, I don't know how many thousands of cases, but I'd say probably 3% of my clients were completely innocent, and the rest were guilty to some degree, where we'd work out a plea bargain and get it worked out favorably. So I would say that, yeah, for someone never to try a case in 30 years, for a whole public defender office, that's one of the ways that people can wind up pleading guilty to something they shouldn't. So like if the public defenders there in North Carolina had that 3% number as well, then why aren't they going to trial? I mean, it's pretty easy if you just tell your client, look, you're not going to win a trial. The cops are going to be believed over you. There's not enough evidence there, and you're going to get convicted and get sent away for 50 years. So why don't you plead to 5? Do a no contest plea to 5, say you're innocent. So that's one of the ways somebody can get sent away that way. I have not heard that. The city in Georgia suspended 11 out of 12 police officers and fired the chief. Kent needs to follow suit. Yeah, Carrie B., you're saying that they were informally talked to in their house as a group. Nobody was individually questioned. Nothing was recorded. No witness went to the police department. Yeah, so I mean, this is an absolute joke. No respect for John O'Keefe at all.
as far as the bulkhead was concerned, when that bulkhead was opened around that time, what, if any, kind of noise would that bulkhead make?
A loud creaking, old rusty metal sound when you opened it.
Is that something that if it was open and you were in the kitchen area, you could hear?
Yes.
Now, in reference to that bulkhead, what, if any, security, or what, was it open? Was it locked? How was that left?
So the bulkhead door was shut and it was broken. So sometimes you could turn the middle thing to lock it, and sometimes it would be hard to do. But the wooden door that goes into the basement has a lock on the doorknob. That is a door that we keep locked because we don't use it.
Now, as far as from the bulkhead,
We should
you
argue.
were shown in that video a gate that opens up to the front yard area of the house, is that correct?
Yes.
What if any other gates are located on the fence in your backyard?
So we also have a gate on the rear part of the fence. And there's also a gate on the opposite side of the house.
And the gate in the rear area of the fence, where does that lead to?
So that leads to some woods, and then eventually you'll hit some train tracks.
Now, with respect to your phone, that was something that you had upgraded prior to any notification you received from the district attorney's office or anything in relation to preserving your phone, is that correct?
Yes.
Now, with respect to that, as far as the information contained within the phone, there are certain types of information, are you familiar with being sort of backed up by the cloud?
Yes.
Would that include calls?
It could.
Could that also include text?
Yes.
Could that include photos?
Yes.
Could that include contacts?
Yes.
And the information that you were shown as far as certain call logs or call records, as far as you know, was that generated after that September of 2022 date?
Yes.
Now, with respect to the preservation, that was in regard to a motion the council had filed for your physical phone, correct?
Yes.
Are you also aware of a judge's order denying that repeatedly as far as them gaining access to your physical phone?
Objection.
I'll allow it.
Yes, it was denied on
Finally, a good ruling.
multiple occasions.
I'll strike the multiple occasions.
So that ought to tell you that it was denied, the preservation of their phones. That request was denied. So they were able to keep their phones until what? That they found out it wasn't going to be held up any longer, that now that was going to be ordered to be preserved so they can be forensically examined. Now, all of a sudden, the phones get traded in. So again, what do they got to hide? It's right there is reasonable doubt. That alone is reasonable doubt on the Karen Reed murder case, okay?
You were asked some questions about boxing, correct?
Yes.
And the boxing that you did, that was in relation to a group associated with the Boston Police Department, is that correct?
Yes.
And when was the last time that you were involved in any kind of actual boxing match?
close to 20 years ago.
Now, with respect to some of the training that you were talking about, with respect to the Boston Police Department, you were given some training as far as defensive tactics, is that correct?
Yes.
And is that something that is standard, that is sort of given and administered to every Boston police officer?
Yes. So within the academy, you go to the defensive tactics training.
And that would include John O'Keefe, correct?
Yes.
Now, as
Okay, officer, my understanding is they actually went to this dog to get the molds from his teeth. So this actual dog, Chloe, I guess it's many miles away, but they somehow got to the dog and got the molds. So to me, it's like, it doesn't matter. You can't know exactly how the teeth would have been aligned to a bite if it's a dog bite. I don't care if you actually see the dog and you know it's the dog in question biting someone's arm. You know, during a scuffle and a fight, there's so many things moving around, and teeth and how they're going to gnash and rip flesh and all that. You're not going to be able to exactly describe a frame by frame account of how that happened. I mean, our dad got attacked by a couple pit bulls when he was in his 80s and almost killed. It was ripping flesh off his arm and stuff like that. He almost died. And so I'm familiar with that kind of thing on a personal level that way. So there's different kind of things that every wound can look different. The same dog could attack multiple people and all the wounds would look totally different. And so trying to do like a play-by-play recounting of how the teeth would have struck onto someone's arm or body, to me, is just sort of like junk science. So there's no recognized expert that can testify those kind of bites. I know this one guy, Crosby or whatever, saying he can do that, but I just don't find that to be something that's recognized, a recognized discipline and experts in the field that has any credibility to me, and I would make sure that the jury understands that as well. Now we're getting close to 2 hours here. I'm just going to go here a couple more.
As far as your
Right.
house, where you used to live, 34 Fairview Road, what, if anything, did you observe or notice with reference to cell phone reception in that area of your home?
So oftentimes, using the phone within my house, it seemed like it was and it's a slang term, the dead zone for the phone. The reception wasn't great.
And is that something that recurred over the time that you lived there?
Yes.
Now, with reference to the phone and prior to the intimate moment that you shared with your wife sometime after 2 a.m., do you recall whether or not the phone screen was locked at that time? Were you checking that at that particular time?
I don't recall the exact timing, but I know it was opened sometimes and then it was closed, obviously, at some point, but I don't know the exact timing.
So the phone may not have been locked at the time that you began that situation with your wife.
It may not have been.
With reference to the call logs or phone records that you
JC, you're asking, it just occurred to you, they may try to fix this jury. The whole system is so corrupt. Would they have any possibility of being able to put their own people and get away with it? You know, the way that folks are called in as jurors is supposed to be like a random system. The clerk of court does it, but anything's possible, or there could be some kind of influence to get some people on the jury. Could there be 12 people enough to convict to have that kind of system? No, I don't think that would happen. I think what you'd have is somebody like that former cop that's on the jury, without anybody even trying to influence him. If you allow a former law enforcement officer to be on a jury and you're basically trying to say that cops framed your client, that's like, I don't understand why they allow that to happen. I just don't understand it. It's very much I would say a botched move by the defense. Assuming that's true, what I heard, that there was a juror that was a former cop, they became a medical professional. Maybe they thought the medical professional and the cops maybe be offended by the cops' behavior. I don't agree with that line of theory at all. I would never want to have not only a law enforcement officer, but anybody related to a law enforcement officer or have any kind of close connections at all be on a jury. And as it turns out, the judge appointed him as the foreman. Normally, foremen are decided among themselves and not the court's intervention like that. So that's something. Another thing that's really weird about Massachusetts there. So I would say, going back to, I'm just going to go ahead and stop it now here. But going back to what I was saying, it's like you really need to have some kind of gotcha moment, some kind of real probing, accusatory type things that, and say things like, so you had plenty of time to get your story straight, right? The story straight, that you knew that the state police are going to be showing up. You knew that they were going to be interviewing Jen. Jen was integrally involved as a witness on this case. You knew as a detective that Jen was going to be called as a one of the most important witnesses because she helped find the body of John O'Keefe there in your driveway. So he had to control the script. He's a detective. He knows how to control the scenes, and yet he never went outside. But he's able to do all these conversations and conveniently get rid of things like his phone, and conveniently now not remember things like the butt dial. So all these things you just add up and play back through your case as a defense counsel, and that's how you get reasonable doubt. So yeah, that's thanks for adding that information here. So I just really hope that defense has more robust cross-examination to really wire brush this guy, because he's full of holes. There's so many different discrepancies he has. Just look at his demeanor. He does not look like some guy that just had some dead body show up in his yard and he's just sort of clueless about it and doesn't have any problems, just saying it like it is. So in any event, more to follow on this. I'll be doing some other witnesses as well in the coming days. So with that, I'll go ahead and sign off here on a Friday night. I may go ahead and do Sunday night as well, another witness. I see from the polling that Jen McCabe is in high demand. So I may do Jen McCabe next. And let me see if there's any other last questions that I want to answer before I sign off here. So y'all have a safe weekend. Thanks, Looking for the Truth, Bugs Bunny. All right, thanks for that. I'm going to go ahead and sign off. Have a great night. Take care.